The 2020 NFL draft, in my opinion, was one of the more talented drafts we've ever seen in a while. The wide receiver class was stacked, the offensive tackle class was stacked, the quarterback class was stacked, even the running back class wasn't too bad, at least it looked like then it wasn't. Since then, a lot of those guys have flourished, a lot of those guys have been in, and some of those guys have been outright bust. But in today's video, we're going to redraft the entire 2020 NFL draft to see how exactly it panned out since then. So without further ado, this is going to be a long video as it is, so we're just going to jump right into it. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel, tap the bell icon, follow me on social medias down below in the description, and let's jump into it. Second first overall is going to be Joe Burrow. That's not going to change at all here. And I know some people in the comments are possibly going to say Justin Herbert should be taken first overall. But Joe Burrow, in my opinion, is still better than Justin Herbert. I know that might be debatable to some people, but I think Joe Burrow is the better quarterback here. Burrow was having a very solid rookie year for the most part before tearing his ACL. However, he came back and led the Bengals to the Super Bowl in his second year in the league. And then in his third year, he almost led them back to the Super Bowl once again. Joe Burrow is consistently named a top 5 quarterback in the NFL for the most part, sometimes even top 3. And I think it's very warranted to this point. Joe Burrow has been a very great quarterback in this league, and it'd be a shame to draft him anywhere else in this redraft other than number 1. The second overall pick was owned by the Washington Commanders, and they originally took Chase Young, and we know the story there. Had a really good rookie year where he won Defensive Rookie of the Year, but after that, he pretty much fell off the map a little bit. His second year, he really didn't do good before he teared his ACL, unfortunately. Came back his third year and didn't really mesh well with the Washington defense. And then his fourth and final year before he got traded to the 49ers, he had like 5 sacks, but it wasn't enough for the Commanders, obviously, and they traded him to the 49ers. This time around, second overall, the Commanders are going to draft Justin Herbert, who's been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL to this point. He won Offensive Rookie of the Year in 2021, and he made the Pro Bowl in 2022. Since being drafted, Justin Herbert has consistently been one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL to this point. And it almost makes you wonder, what if the Commanders decided right then and there that they want another quarterback and they drafted Justin Herbert to pair with a guy like Terry McLaurin in the future? I think that would have been a really underrated duo, in my opinion. I mean, obviously, being in Washington isn't exactly too much better than being in Los Angeles, especially the Chargers specifically. But either way, he might go into a better situation where he has a better receiving core for the most part. But other than that, yeah, it's not too much better. But in the end, it's better for the Commanders in the long run. Third overall was owned by the Detroit Lions and originally took Jeff Okudah, but during his time there, he was pretty underwhelming. He had 2 season-ending injuries, and while he was there, he wasn't particularly the best corner while he was there on his team either. And in the end, he ended up getting traded to the Atlanta Falcons. Third overall this time, they're going to take Justin Jefferson, and I don't think I need to tell you about Justin Jefferson's overall career to tell you how good he's been to this point. He's been Offensive Player of the Year in 2022. He's been an All-Pro. He's been a Pro Bowler. He's been consistently one of the better receivers in the NFL to this point. Like I said, I don't think I need to go over his whole career to tell you how good a receiver Justin Jefferson is to this point. He's going to come into this Detroit Lions team and hopefully save Matthew Stafford for leaving for another year. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it does. But even if he doesn't, save Matthew Stafford from leaving, the new quarterback, Jared Goff, they bring in may help him in the end, though. So, like I said, either way, Jefferson's going to have a pretty solid quarterback to work with and a pretty solid offense to work with the Detroit Lions. Fourth overall pick was owned by the New York Giants. And originally with this pick, they took Andrew Thomas. And for the most part, I'm going to stick with Andrew Thomas with this pick as well. We all know Andrew Thomas was pretty bad in his rookie year, but every season after that, Andrew Thomas was one of the better tackles in the league. In 2021, he was good, but in 2022, he took that All-Pro league, and according to PFF, he was one of their highest graded offensive tackles in the league. And then in 2023, he dealt with some injuries, but he was still one of the better tackles in the league despite these injuries. I know some people are going to say that Tristan Wirfs should be the pick here, but in the end, I think the Giants valued Andrew Thomas a little bit more, obviously because he was one of the better left tackles in the draft, like one of the guys who came in here and could easily play left tackle right off the bat, and that's why I'm picking him first in this draft by the New York Giants. Now, fifth overall is definitely going to be where it gets kind of messy and it's going to get controversial here. Originally, the Dolphins Dolphins took Tua with this pick. And while Tua has been a solid quarterback in the NFL to this point, there's still a lot of question marks around Tua on if he's really the guy for the Dolphins to this point. In case you haven't realized it yet, I am not going to be drafting Tua 5th overall in this redraft. However, I will be drafting Jordan Love 5th overall to the Dolphins. Jordan Love was set out for pretty much the first 3 years of his NFL career for the most part. He didn't play any games in 2020. He played a few games in 2021 and 2022, but obviously he would get his chance in 2023 to finally prove to the NFL he was worth the pick. And in 2023, Jordan Love did just that. Passed for over 4,000 yards, 32 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, leading the Packers to a 9-8 record, where they would then go against the Dallas Cowboys in the wildcard round, where Jordan Love would go off in that game as well. In the game against the Cowboys, he passed for over 2,000 yards and 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, leading to a huge upset win and becoming the first 7th seed in NFL history to win a playoff game. I know some of you are not going to like the fact that I picked Jordan Love this early, but in some videos, you got to have some hot takes in it, and this is one of my hot takes for now. Jordan Love being picked this early. So go ahead in the comments saying things like, I can't believe you picked him over Tua and Jalen Hurts. Well, speaking of Jalen Hurts is going to be taken 6th overall by the Chargers with this pick. Originally, this pick was Justin Herbert, but obviously you saw he went 2nd overall to Commanders earlier in the video. Hurts would not get his start until later in the season with the Philadelphia Eagles. He would finish the season passing for over 1,000 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 4 interceptions, while also having 300 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. He took somewhat of a step up in 2022, where he passed for over 3,000 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions, while also rushed for 700 yards on the ground and 10 touchdowns. He led the Eagles to the playoffs, where they would get beat down by the Buccaneers in the wildcard round. But he took a massive step up in 2022 after getting A.J. Brown, where he passed for over 3,000 yards, 22 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, while also rushed for 13 touchdowns on the ground and over 700 yards. Turnovers were a big issue for Jalen Hurts in 2023, but he still managed to carve out a pretty solid year for himself in the end. Hurts is definitely one of the more confusing quarterbacks in the NFL. He's called a system quarterback and a quarterback that pretty much can't play without good receivers. But whether that's true or not, we'll never know. But he's going to the Chargers with this pick regardless. 7th overall pick was owned by the Carolina Panthers. Originally with this pick, they took Derrick Brown. Now, Derrick Brown has been a very great player, especially this year for the Carolina Panthers. But it's only right for the Panthers that I go quarterback with this pick. And that quarterback is obviously going to be none other than Tua Tagovailoa. Despite a few injuries that he's had throughout his NFL career, Tua's definitely been a very great quarterback to this point. In 2022, he passed for over 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, and 8 interceptions. And in 2023, he passed for 4,000 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 14 interceptions, leading the Dolphins to the playoffs, but unfortunately falling to the Chiefs in the wildcard round. Yes, there's definitely a lot of questions surrounding if Tua is that guy for the Dolphins, but I couldn't leave him at the top 10 in this video, and I had to draft him with this pick, and he's going to go to the Panthers 7th overall easily. The 8th overall pick was owned by the Arizona Cardinals, and pretty simple here, I went Tristan Wirfs with this pick. Wirfs has been an absolute beast since being drafted by the Buccaneers. He was a first-team All-Pro, and he was a 2-time second-team All-Pro. He was a part of that 2020 actually, Buccaneers Super Bowl team, and also he made the Pro Bowl. Not that that's important, but he still was a part of it. Now, obviously, originally the Cardinals took Isaiah Simmons with this pick, but obviously he didn't work out too well with Arizona, and he did get traded to the New York Giants before the 2023 season started. Wirfs is going to come into this offense immediately and help Kyler Murray and be his building block for the future, hopefully. The 8th overall pick will be owned by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Originally with this pick, they took C.J. Henderson. However, for the most part, C.J. Henderson was a total bust during his whole time in Jacksonville, and he was traded in his 2nd season with the team. Now, they did take a receiver in the 2nd round with Laviska Shenault, but he also turned out to be a bust for the team as well. So it's only right if I pick CeeDee Lamb with this 8th overall pick. Despite the fact he was sharing targets with Amari Cooper in his first 2 seasons, and also in 2020, he also had the quarterback problems after Dak Prescott went out, CeeDee Lamb was pretty solid in his rookie year, having over 900 yards receiving, 5 touchdowns, and 74 receptions. He would up those numbers in 2021, however, with 79 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. However, his best season would come in 2023, when he had over 130 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns. He was named first-team All-Pro in 2023, and he also made the Pro Bowl in 2021, 2022, and 2023. He was also the NFL receptions leader in 2023 as well. It's safe to say that CeeDee Lamb is also one of the best receivers in the NFL to this point as well. but I hate that he's on the Dallas Cowboys as of right now. 10th overall selection was owned by the Cleveland Browns, and this is where it got kind of tricky for me for the most part. Jedrick Wills has been a pretty solid offensive lineman for the Browns to this point, but the question is, do you redraft him in this redraft, as he's been pretty good enough to at least warrant a redraft for the most part? Now, honestly, I went through all my options here, and I really couldn't find a reason to move away from Jedrick Wills to this point, honestly. A lot of people in the comments are saying, there are a number of guys you could have went with here. But honestly, it was hard for me, and honestly, I will keep Jedrick Wills with this pick for the time being in a redraft. 11th overall was owned by the New York Jets, and originally here they took Mekhi Becton. Becton has dealt with some injury issues over the past couple of seasons and very inconsistent play, so obviously he's not going to be in play with this pick. At this point, the Jets were a pretty bad team overall for the most part. They were pretty bad. Like, they had a lot of holes on their team. Any guy I picked in particular probably would have been an upgrade, but I did go with one guy that's probably going to start some comments down below by Cowboys fans in particular, but 11th overall to the Jets, Jalen Johnson. Johnson finally got the recognition he deserved by a lot of the NFL fans this year, as he was a Pro Bowler this year, and he was also an All-Pro, as he was one of the best corners in the NFL this season. Jalen Johnson was so good this year that he had a very good 33.3 passer rating allowed when targeted. That is impressive. Trevon Diggs was definitely in play here, but it was a very tough one to figure out who should go with this pick in the redraft. I know a lot of people are going to say Trevon Diggs should have gone with this pick, but like I said, it was a very close one, and I evaluated it closely for the most part. The 12th overall pick will be owned by the Las Vegas Raiders. Originally with this pick, they went Henry Ruggs, and for the most part, we already know what happened with Henry Ruggs and how his career has gone to this point. And I'm going to stick with receiver for the most part here, but I'm going to draft Brandon Ayuk with this pick. Brandon Ayuk, it's hard for him to get a lot of love in the NFL because he's on a team with guys like Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, and Nick Bosa. But Brandon Ayuk is definitely one of the more underrated receivers in the league to this point. In his rookie year, he had over 700 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns with 60 receptions. But most recently, his best year came in 2023, where he was named an All-Pro when he had 75 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. This was another close one for the most part, as I thought about going T. Higgins with this pick. Obviously, it was a very close one here, but Brandon Ayuk has definitely been a better receiver for the most part over the past 2 seasons. Yes, I know people are going to say recency bias is crazy, but T. Higgins will be going off the board very shortly. Don't worry, it's not going to be too long. The 13th overall pick would be originally owned by the Indianapolis Colts before obviously the 49ers traded up with them. During their trade, they also would trade away DeForest Buckner, and they would select Javon Kinlaw as a replacement. Kinlaw has not worked out too well to this point, and he has definitely been underwhelming for their 49ers to this point. But I told you before that T. Higgins was not going to be on the board too long, because he is going to be going with the 49ers 13th overall. He was really good in 2020 with 6-7 receptions for over 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. In 2021, despite the arrival of Jamar Chase, his numbers would actually go up, having 74 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. He'll follow up with another 1,000-yard season in 2022 with 74 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. His numbers would dip tremendously in 2023, only having 600 yards receiving and 5 touchdowns. There is a lot of talk around Cincinnati on if T. Higgins will be extended with this team, on if any team will give T. Higgins a big contract in the end. Definitely going to be one of the more intriguing parts of the offseason to this point, as T. Higgins is still a really good receiver, but the question is he really worth the money that a lot of teams are actually willing to give him for the most part? Only time will tell. The 14th overall pick was owned by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now, originally with this pick, they traded up and they took Tristan Wirfs with that 13th overall pick. But for the most part, I'm sticking with this pick, and I'm just going to take a guy that they took later on in the draft for the most part. That obviously being Antoine Winfield Jr., who's been one of the better safeties in the league to this point. Winfield during the 2023 season, where he was an All-Pro, had 76 tackles, 6 sacks, 3 interceptions, and also 6 forced fumbles. He was an absolute beast for the Buccaneers this year. Winfield was upset that he didn't make the Pro Bowl, but guess what, man? You were an All-Pro. Way better in my opinion. This one for the most part was a no-brainer for the Buccaneers. In a redraft, yeah, Winfield's definitely going higher. 15th overall pick will be owned by the Denver Broncos, and originally with this pick, they took Jerry Jeudy. Jeudy's career can be described as very inconsistent to this point. He's had some great moments, and then he's had some really bad moments. So with That mix in mind, I don't know if he's worth being drafted with the 15th overall pick for the Broncos now. But I would still draft the receiver, and the receiver I drafted would be none other than Michael Pittman Jr. Pittman's rookie year wasn't really all that, exciting. He only had 500 yards and 1 touchdown, but his next 3 years in the NFL would definitely be better. In 2022, he had over 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns with 88 receptions. In 2022, he had 99 receptions for 925 yards and 4 touchdowns. Some bad quarterback play is definitely contributing to why he didn't, have 1,000 yards probably. But in 2023, he would get back to 1,000 yards, but this time he had 109 receptions for over 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns. So in my opinion, I think it is warranted for Pittman to be drafted this early by the Broncos. 18th overall pick was owned by the Atlanta Falcons, and originally they took AJ Terrell, and I'm actually going to keep AJ Terrell with this pick. Terrell had a great season in 2021, where he was one of the best corners in the league, allowing a passer rating of 47.5. Due to this, he was a second-team All-Pro in 2021. Play would drop off a bit in 2022. However, in 2023, he would sort of bounce back, although it was not near as the 2020 level he once played at. But granted, in my opinion, he's done well than enough to be drafted by the Falcons with this pick. 17th overall was owned by the Dallas Cowboys, and originally with this pick, they took CeeDee Lamb, but obviously he went off the board to the Jaguars a couple picks ago. And honestly, this one's pretty straightforward. They still needed a corner, so I took Trevon Diggs anyway earlier than they would in the second. Now, Trevon Diggs isn't really known for being a lockdown corner or anything like that, but he creates turnovers, and for the most part, that's pretty much his go-to game. He's not going to initially lock down a receiver or shut him down. He's gonna do his best versus them and match him up pretty well, but like I said, he's mostly known for his interceptions and causing turnovers, and that's okay for the most part because he's good at it. I know it's very complicated and it sounds like a lot, but it makes sense in the end, especially for the Cowboys, how their defense works for the most part. So yeah, the Cowboys are going to draft Trevon Diggs earlier than they would in the second round with this pick. 18th overall pick was owned by the Miami Dolphins, and that went to draft Austin Jackson. Now, Austin Jackson has been a bit of an up and down guy for the most part. He was okay in 2023 for the most part, and he's been up and down, still again, very inconsistent player once again getting drafted here. I will go with a safety like their needs say with this pick, and I would go personally one of my favorite players in the league, probably because he plays for the Giants, and that would be Xavier McKinney. McKinney has been a very solid safety in the NFL to this point. Now, he did miss some time due to injury in 2020, obviously, in his rookie year after he got injured during the training camps. Then in 2021, he was actually a better safety than most safeties in the league. Obviously, the Giants were pretty bad, so he didn't get the recognition he deserved. Then in 2022, he was pretty, underwhelming, but for the most part, he did get injured once again. That kind of messed him up. But most recently in 2023, he was back to performing like one of the better safeties in the league to this point, and that did not get a lot of recognition from a lot of people, but McKinney was pretty good for the most part. Now, there were a few more safety options for the Dolphins I could have choose, but McKinney stood out to me as the best in my opinion. Hot take? Probably. Controversial? Yes, but we'll see how this ages. 19th overall pick was owned by the Las Vegas Raiders, and originally with this pick, they took Damon Arnett, and his career pretty much fizzled out before it could even get started for the most part. And this one was pretty easy for me here. I took Derrick Brown, who probably could have a case for being gone way early off the board than this. Derrick Brown was one of the better defensive tackles, defensive ends, whatever you want to call him in the league this season, as he had a combined 98 tackles and 2 sacks on the season. Combined that with a 90.1 PFF grade and a total of 41 pressures on the season, and that is a pretty good season for a guy like Derrick Brown. He also made the Pro Bowl this year in 2023 for the first time. But honestly, it's sad because the Panthers were pretty bad. He didn't get the recognition he deserved for the most part. As I said, he easily should have a case for being drafted way earlier in this draft, so I had to snatch him up really quick for the Raiders with this pick. 20th overall pick was taken by the Jacksonville Jaguars. Originally, they took K'Lavon Chaisson, but so far, he has been very underwhelming for the Jaguars to this point. But I would go with edge rusher with this pick, and Chase Young is finally your time to go off the board here. But Chase Young's production definitely dropped after his rookie year with the Commanders. I definitely still believe with the right team that Chase Young could probably be a better player than he once was. And maybe if he was drafted by the Jaguars with this pick, he would become an even better player. Nobody really knows. But I did pick him off the board here, considering the fact that the Jaguars, they don't have, the best of pass rushes, at least at the time they didn't. But pair him with Josh Allen and imagine how good this pass rush would be at the time. So I think as of right now, this is a very good pick for them right here. 21st overall pick went to the Philadelphia Eagles, and obviously with this pick, they originally took Jalen Reagor laughably. Don't worry, you're not going to take him with this pick. For this pick, I would have them take L'Jarius Sneed, who originally picked later in the draft to the Kansas City Chiefs, who turned out to be a very solid corner for them to this point. He allowed a passer rating of a 55.9, and he was really one of the better corners in the league that didn't get a lot of recognition. But I'm giving him the recognition here, and I'm having him being drafted in the first round by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I won't mention his PFF grades because apparently L'Jarius Sneed doesn't like those PFF grades for some reason. To be specific though, he said PFF grades suck. But he's kind of right, he's kind of not, but I see what he means though. But I'm not going to argue with a pro, but hey man, I'm drafting you in the first round, so you get my recognition at least. 22nd pick was owned by the Minnesota Vikings, and originally with this pick, they took Justin Jefferson, but obviously he went 3rd overall to the Detroit Lions, so obviously that's not an option. But another D lineman was needed for the Minnesota Vikings at the time, so I took a guy who broke out this year in Justin Madubuike. Madubuike was a big reason why the Ravens defense was so good this year. He had over 38 tackles, 13 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. He would end up making a Pro Bowl and was also an All-Pro this year in 2023. It's not Justin Jefferson level good, it's definitely good enough for the Minnesota Vikings at this point. Now, the 23rd overall pick was originally owned by the New England Patriots. However, the Chargers did trade it with them, and they did take their pick, and they took Kenneth Murray. Now, there are a few instances in this video where there were trades on draft day in the first round, and for the most part I stuck with those picks that were traded, and in some cases I did revert back to the original team who had that draft pick, and this is one of those cases where I decided to revert back to the Patriots, and I decided to make them keep their draft pick. And it's really hard to say who the Patriots would have drafted with that first round pick, honestly, because there are a number of guys who you can make a case that they should have drafted, honestly. Now, obviously, quarterback is not an option here because all the other quarterbacks, Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, all those guys are already off the board here. So this was a really tough option for me personally. I actually re-recorded this video to revert back to the Patriots pick. And originally, I had the Chargers take Patrick Queen. And honestly, for the Patriots, I'm also going to have them take Patrick Queen in this redraft. Now, Queen's first couple years in the NFL definitely weren't anything special, obviously. He was one of the, more average linebackers in the league for the most part. I won't say he was terrible, but I will say he wasn't all that good either. But obviously, with his 5th-year option got in decline, he stepped up this year big time. He became one of the better linebackers in the league for the most part. Obviously, him being next to a guy like Roquan Smith helped him out a lot, and he ended up becoming an All-Pro, and I think he became a Pro Bowler this year as well. Now, the Ravens are going to have a number of guys they have to extend in free agency this year, and I have to imagine that Patrick Queen is going to be one of those guys that they have long talks with. As like I said, he had a very good year, and it's going to be hard for the Ravens to let him walk right after this. And he's going to go to a team like the Patriots. And the Patriots have always been known to reduce some really good linebackers. And honestly, I think early on, he would have been better off going here than he did the New England Patriots for the most part, if he was drafted at this position for the most part. That may be a hot take, maybe it isn't, but who knows. But Patrick Queen is definitely going to be my pick here for the New England Patriots. 24th pick will be owned by the New Orleans Saints. And originally with this pick, they took Cesar Ruiz. But with this pick, they're going to take Alex Highsmith, who was originally taken way in the later rounds by the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, it's hard to get recognition when you're on a team that also features one of the best pass rushers in the league in TJ Watt. But Alex Highsmith, for the most part, has been really decent for the Steelers in his career. This season for the Steelers, he had 50 tackles, 7 sacks, and 69 pressures, and also 2 forced fumbles. So for the most part, he's been very good despite not getting enough recognition. He was also very good in 2022, having a combined 47 tackles, 15 sacks, 55 pressures, and 5 forced fumbles. He has definitely earned being drafted in the first round in my redraft, in my opinion, by the New Orleans Saints, considering that they did struggle with pass rush for the most part in 2020. They were one of the bottom 10 teams when it came to pass rushing for the most part. So Alex Highsmith is coming to help for the most part. 49ers will own the 25th overall pick in this draft, and originally in this draft, they took Brandon Ayuk, but obviously he was taken off the board a couple minutes ago. It was pretty tough for the 49ers, but honestly, I went with offensive line, and I had them take Mike Onwenu. It's been a Pretty solid offensive lineman for the Patriots to this point, and he's going to go to the 49ers for way better offense and sooner or later a way better quarterback. So he has benefits there for way better offense and obviously way better coaching. So I think him at this spot is pretty okay in my opinion. 26th overall pick was owned by the Green Bay Packers, and originally with this pick they went Jordan Love, but obviously he's gone way off the board now. But remember, this was the same draft that a lot of people were clamoring for the Packers to take a receiver here, so it's only right if I take a receiver now, and I'm going to have them take Gabriel Davis. This one was pretty tough as Darnell Mooney was another guy that came up about with this draft pick, but I felt like Gabriel Davis was the more consistent player, so I went with him. He was a pretty solid option during his time with the Buffalo Bills, aside from Stephon Diggs. In 2023, he had 45 receptions for over 700 yards and 7 touchdowns. In 2022, he had 48 receptions for 800 yards and 7 touchdowns as well. You pair him up with Devontae Adams, and for the most part, that is a pretty solid receiving core for the most part, especially when you have Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback. So, pretty good, draft pick here in my opinion, I would say. 27th overall would be owned by the Seattle Seahawks. Originally with this pick, they took Jordan Brooks. Brooks hasn't been overly terrible in my opinion, but there's definitely better options with this pick. And I took Robert Hunt, who originally went to the Dolphins with this pick. Another pretty good offensive lineman taken with this pick. He's a pretty good pass blocker and he's a pretty good run blocker, and he's one of the Dolphins' only good offensive linemen aside from Teron Armstead, honestly. So I think this is a perfect replacement pick for the Seattle Seahawks at this point. 28th overall was owned by the Baltimore Ravens, and obviously originally with this pick, they took Patrick Queen, who just went off the board not too long ago. While it was tough here, yes, getting kind of desperate now, I went Kyle Duggar with this pick. Duggar's best season with the Patriots came in 2021 when he had 4 receptions and allowed a passer rating of a 59.1. He was okay in 2020 and 2022 as well, but in 2023, his play did drop off a little bit for the most part. Regardless though, for the most part, it's getting kind of slim pickings now, so I think his pick with the Ravens is pretty solid here. 29th pick was owned by the Tennessee Titans, and originally with this pick, they took Isaiah Wilson, who didn't even play more than, I don't think, 1 game with this team. I don't even think it was 1 game. I don't even think it was maybe a couple snaps, but I know it wasn't that many snaps though. As we go down this draft board, these picks continue to get more difficult. I kid you not. But I figured it's time to take Jeremy Chinn off the board here, and I will with this pick. He was pretty good in 2020. He was the Defensive Rookie of the Year runner-up, and he had a pretty good year in 2021 too. But since then, injuries have continued to pile up with Jeremy Chinn, and that has obviously slowed his development. But going to a defense like the Titans definitely might help him improve here regardless. So, like I said, it's slim pickings now, so Jeremy Chinn is going to go with this pick. 30th overall pick was owned by the Miami Dolphins, and with this pick originally, they took Noah Igbenogany, and obviously he's not going with this pick. But I will take Tyler Bizdaz. Did I say that right with this pick? And he was originally taken by the Dallas Cowboys in the 4th round. Been a pretty solid center for the Cowboys to this point, and even made a Pro Bowl in 2022. And for the most part, this is, somewhat of a better option than Ted Karras. That was their option at center in 2020. So, yeah, they're getting a better option here regardless. We are now getting to the final 2 picks of this 2020 redraft. 31st overall was owned by the Minnesota Vikings. Originally with this pick, they took Jeff Gladney. Rest in peace, by the way. This pick, I honestly just decided to take a player that he already took in the first place that ended up being Michigan safety Josh Metellus that he would take later on in the draft. Metellus was one of the better players for the Minnesota Vikings in 2022, and he's also been pretty solid in 2023 for the most part. I argue Cam Curl should be the option here, but either way, this is still a pretty big upgrade for their secondary at this point. And the last pick of this redraft, originally the Chiefs took Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and this time around, they're going to take Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor was an absolute beast in 2021, having 1,800 yards on the ground and 8 touchdowns, along with 361 yards receiving and 2 touchdowns. Injuries have slowed him down the past 2 seasons, but Taylor is still regarded as one of the best running backs in the league when he's healthy. And he's an easy upgrade over Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's been pretty ineffective to this point. Even though they would draft Isaiah Pacheco, at this point, this is still a really good pick. And that is my 2020 redraft video. I don't think some of you guys know how difficult that was, especially the last few picks. I really had to drag it out there, but we got it done. We got it done. So, let me know what you guys think about that. And if your redraft is any different, let me know in the comments down below. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe to my channel and tap the bell icon for future football content. Follow me on social medias down below in the description. I have Instagram, I have TikTok, I have Twitter and X, whatever you want to call it. That's down below in the description. And if you like New York Giants content, I have an exclusive New York Giants content channel. The link will be down below in the description. But anyways, that's a wrap here. See you guys in the next video. Peace.